to wake up and see Donald all over every single paper. How predictable was that?
It's so brilliant. If you haven't seen it, here we are. This is the front page of the Times this morning. Donald Trump. I mean, what a scowl.
But what a brilliant scowl. But I reckon it was so well rehearsed in terms of what they have to do, how this is going to become the poster boy, and the whole sort of Les Miserables, a prisoner, PO 1135809. There's a song
Jean
there
Valjean.
Do you think that he looks like the American eagle by accident?
Oh, no, I think that's all deliberate. And what I love as well, there's a couple of things that I love. Is obviously they're now talking about slapping it on mugs, and I think that's happening in T-shirts and so on and so forth. And using
They've already done
Mugshot.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're looking at sort of MAGA mug, I think they're calling it, aren't they? Make America great again. But interesting question, as you know, I'm an intellectual property lawyer. The question of copyright in the photograph. Because,
who owns it?
Well, that's a very interesting thing, because normally the general rule is it's the photographer who owns it or their employer.
So the county jail.
Very interesting. But it's slightly different when it's in the public domain if it's a mugshot. And it depends on federal rules and so on and so forth. What is clear, unless Donald bought it...
So who does own it?
Well, it'd be interesting. I would turn around and say possibly the state own it. And the question then about licensing, because clearly Donald doesn't own it, and therefore raising money from it raises all sorts of questions. But also, the other thing is, interestingly, if it is in the public domain, which is what they say about mugshots, it means that anybody can do it, subject to the laws of privacy and so on and so forth. So the best advice is get in touch and we'll sort it out.
But he must have taken legal advice on this.
Well, you say he must. People say this all the time with Donald. He must have. I think.
Well, but also my understanding is when he turned himself in for that mugshot, he chose primetime TV, so that obviously it was then streamed across the United States.
And what I love on his Twitter feed, you won't be able to see all of that. His last Twitter feed before last one was on the 8th of the 1st, 2021, in which he said, to all of those who've asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January the 20th. His last post was yesterday. Mugshot. He's taken his ownership of this sort of stuff is glorious. Election interference, never surrender. Well, he had to surrender because that's why he went in. DonaldTrump.com.
Do you not feel, though, it would be very silly of the state to start to sue him about copyright of his picture?
Well, I'm happy to take on any cases.
You are terrible.
I'll do that. I'll argue any side.
Is it not just more fuel to his fan base?
Yes.
What I love, and we predicted on this very show when sat here last week, all that's happened is the more that he controls the narrative, says, this is going to happen to me, I'm a big victim, the more his ratings go up and up and up. Interesting, the figures just released, I don't know if you saw this Republican debate. Fox say they got 12.8 million people watched that little debate.
And how many watched his interview?
All dressed as Trump, weren't they? And Tucker Carlson, I just checked before we came on here today, Tucker Carlson, he got 259 million people watching. So you suddenly what?
And that interview was not even on a mainstream channel, it was on X.
And doesn't that show? Yes, absolutely.
X, which used to be called Twitter, which isn't called Twitter, it's called X.
I know the idea of the gesture, though. It does make us feel good, doesn't it? I think Elon's got a thing there.
No, but isn't that amazing? So he sat down with Tucker Carlson. Of course, Tucker got fired, didn't he?
Yes.
And then he's gone to X. And now, obviously, Donald Trump, once again, controlling that narrative. But the fact that he's now... Are you allowed to say tweeting or
posting?
Posting on X.
Yes.
Why is he doing that?
X. Why is he doing that? Very X.
Because there's an election coming up, and he realises how.
But he has Truth Social or whatever it is.
Well, he did both, and this is, as I say, it's the first post he did since the 8th of the 1st, 2021, and he absolutely controlled the narrative. What I find extraordinary, if you look at most people's mugshots, the lighting is particularly good in this one. The way that he does it, the way that he's dressed, and everything else, he is absolutely planning from the word get-go to turn around and say, this is going to be part of my campaign, and boy, is it working.
Well, sure, and I said, in terms of the polls, that Vivek Ramaswamy, and actually I liked him. I thought he was clever. He used Barack Obama's opening line.
He did.
Didn't he? And what did he say? He said, who's that skinny guy with a funny last name?
Yes.
He's on 9.7%. Ron DeSantis, not doing so well. He's now down to 15%. Trump didn't even even turn up.
No,
and he's at 52%.
And he didn't need to. And I'll tell you what, Renee and I were discussing this a little bit earlier. And who do you reckon his running mate's going to be with Trump?
Vivek Ramaswamy, because he's very good. He's like DeSantis. He's young. He also will capture a huge, growing vote base in America.
Yes,
he really will.
You heard it here first. Absolutely, well done. And you said the name so beautifully as well, which is why I said I was discussing it earlier.
But actually, it feeds very well into Trump's narrative. Vivek Ramaswamy is self-made. He's a self-made billionaire.
Absolutely.
And that is the freedom of the United States allows you to do that.
Yeah,
the only thing that makes me a little bit sad about all of this is that if you look at Ron DeSantis, you know, he actually was a pioneer in Florida for freedom.
Yes.
Freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom from COVID, you know, and he actually walked his talk, whereas Trump didn't, really. On COVID, he talked lots of nonsense, but he actually just went along with the scientists and, you know, the Faucis of the world.
Well,
so
it is, I don't know if you saw the Tucker Carlson interview, but it was phenomenal what he sort of touched on. He touched on everything from shortage of water to how he would solve the war tomorrow, how it would never have happened. He's taken the crooked Hillary down, put that onto Biden.
I don't think the invasion of Ukraine would have happened under Trump.
No, and he says how he'd sit down with all the leaders and how they respected each other and how with Hillary they would have
They wouldn't dare, because Trump is maverick enough to do something back.
And I think from that point of view, we should never underestimate. And the last election that happened with one before that with Trump, I predicted he would get the nomination. I predicted he was going to win, and so on and so forth. And I reckon he will stand a very good chance.
That's rubbish.
Of winning this.
Stand a good chance. Come on, up your game.
He'll win. No, he will win.
Up your game. What?
He's going to win, is he? What I also like, I heard it here first. Edited, he won't win. No, he will win. He will win.
He will win.
It looked good.
Okay.
What I also loved is seeing them all in a little line, all looking like mini Trumps. You know, they all had little red ties on, didn't they? Apart from one of them, and looked very, very good. And they were all asked that if Trump went down, would they still support him if he got the nomination?
Asked to put their hand up.
And they sort of reluctant. So at some point, yes, and then they were all looking down the line. Well, I better say yes as well.
I think Vivek went straight for it.
He did. And well done him. So he's there. I think you're absolutely right. Put your money on him being the running mate and Trump winning.
I think it's really powerful.
It's very powerful.
Trump and him.
I think,
very powerful.
And I think all this standard sort of rhetoric you get from Trump about rubbishing Biden, about his age and so on and so forth, you're going to find that. And I think that...
Well, and to be fair, Biden doesn't look like he's in the first flush of youth, and he doesn't look very well.
Yeah, well, he
wants to run again.
Well, he does want to run again, but they're sort of saying, well, and I've heard people say that he may not run again.
I don't think the Democrats want him to run again.
No, well, they don't.
They really don't. And, you know, that's the interesting dynamic here, isn't it? Because at the moment, it's Biden-Trump. And that's quite an interesting, you know, scenario where I think Trump probably has the edge on that. But Trump versus someone younger for the Democrats, you know...
Kamala?
It changed. Oh, no,
she just doesn't have it.